This is how to replace your standard big green egg gasket with a far superior Rutland gasket for under $20 and less than an hour of your time. I'll list all the materials that you need in the description with links so you can find those materials and do this yourself. And before we get started, real quick on why I changed to a Rutland gasket. A Rutland gasket is a fiberglass woven material that goes really high in temperature, like 2000 degrees, which is much higher than the standard felt big green egg gasket, which I've never been a huge fan of. For one, you have to replace it at least every couple of years. They wear out, and when they start to deteriorate a little bit, it lets smoke out. And also when it's cold out and rainy and wet, it's going to let some moisture in, and that causes mold. Once there's mold inside, it's no big deal. You can do what's called the burn off, which makes your egg pretty much like it was new inside. However, that destroys the felt gasket and causing this kind of vicious cycle of having to replace the gasket. And then I was looking for a longer term solution. There were some gasket replacements that were pretty expensive, but they seemed like a better option, more along the lines of what they put in a Komodo Joe. But that's where I was on Reddit and I discovered someone named Ron Pratt, who's an 80-plus-year-old big green egger, and he will actually send you the gasket material that you need, and he only charges you his cost and shipping, and it cost me $11 to get the gasket material. Then you just need some high heat silicone adhesive that you can get at an auto parts store on Amazon, and a couple other things to clean off the old gasket. It was really pretty easy, but hopefully I never have to replace this again. It's supposed to last a really long time because of the material that it is far superior to the felt that comes with the big green egg. The other nice thing about using a Rutland gasket is it's only on the bottom, so you don't need to install it on the top and the bottom. Once you have this on here, the maintenance is much easier. Also, when you're doing this, it's probably easier if you take the lid off of your egg before you replace this gasket. It's gonna make removing the old gasket easier, especially for the top portion. I was lazy and I did not take the lid off. So it's really not a requirement. A little bit trickier to clean the lid portion of this, but not impossible. Just because of how my egg sits in my outdoor kitchen, I didn't wanna take it out to completely remove the lid, just being lazy. But I was able to do this whole job without removing the lid. Now, one tip that I would highly recommend is to get your alignment of your green egg top all in check before you replace the gasket, no matter what kind of gasket you're using. Because if you don't, and the egg lid is rubbing the wrong way on the gasket, it's gonna push it right off. So all that work that you put into it is gonna get destroyed, and you're gonna have to replace the gasket again. All the materials and tools are listed in the description, but of course the major ones are the gasket and the Permatex, which is going to seal the gasket to the egg. This paint and rust stripper goes into a drill, so you can use this instead of acetone for removing the old gasket. And the first step is to remove the old gasket, and to keep any debris from falling into the egg, it's nice to cover it. I used some butcher paper that I had, but you could use foil, you could use a garbage bag, really anything you want. I kind of taped it in there a little bit to keep things from getting on the edges, and then it is time to start scraping off the old gasket. Now mine came off fairly easily because it's very in need of being changed. Yours might be a little tougher, but then it does leave a good amount of residue, and that's where this paint and rust stripper comes in. You can use acetone, but that is a chemical, so this will just grind off the residue gently. It looks kind of rough, but it's actually pretty soft. And then you can use one of these kind of like soapstone non-toxic scrapers to get all of the rest off. Vacuumed up any dust that was around before adding the new gasket on to keep it nice and clean. And then I marked the gasket in the halfway point, and then each quarter, and then also marked the egg at the 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock spaces, so that you're able to align these up. You use the Permatex and work in 4 to 6 inch increments. This was the trickiest part for me, is working with the Permatex. You can see I got a little bit messy. Not super proud of how this looks, but in this instance, it's really about how it adheres to the egg, and I think this definitely worked. So what you're doing is you are pinching and condensing this gasket because it's quite a bit longer than the circumference of your egg. So you're condensing it down, and you're lining up your tape marks on the gasket with the 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock marks that you put on your egg, and you're making sure that the gasket is the full width of the area that you're covering. You can use a wax paper covered block of wood to push it down. I probably had 10 minutes doing this or less, and it was still able to move it around. I got the hang of it at the end, and it started to look a lot better. So if I ever have to do this again, it'll definitely come out better. When you have an inch or two left over, you can just snip that off with some really sharp scissors. And if you want, you can get those threads and burn them off with a butane torch if it bothers you. I then covered the opening with some wax paper and closed the lid for 24 hours to let it fully dry before I even thought about firing up the egg. I used a straight razor blade to clean up a little bit of extra sealer that was left on there. You can still see some orange, but really doesn't bother me. Overall, super happy with how this turned out. And this is definitely an upgrade I've been wanting to do for a long time. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments and I'm happy to help.